Hey everybody, what's up? And welcome back to my little kind of dahlia garden, I guess. I grew a lot of dahlias this past season, and a lot of people have asked me, like, hey, do you have any tips or tricks for beginners? You know, I'm a total novice and I need some help. And fortunately, I think I have learned a lot about learning to grow dahlias over the course of the last few seasons. And I've definitely made a lot of mistakes that might be helpful to share with other people. So I figured, why not? So let's get started in this. First and foremost, you want to start with good dahlia tubers. Now, I know that sounds like total common sense, like, well, no, duh. But you want to start with healthy tubers. A lot of times when you order from websites, you get imported tubers, which are large, just kind of massive clumps. The problem is those clumps aren't always the best because they can be damaged. You can see here, this tuber has lots of eyes. You can see those little nubby points at the top. Those are called eyes, and that means that one is ready to grow. You'll notice that these are all single tubers by themselves because I bought them from an independent supplier. Here's an example of a tuber I got that was blind. It had no eye on it, and it was cut in half. This tuber was total garbage, okay? So before ordering any tubers, you definitely want to make sure and read the reviews, because we want to start out with the best possible chance of success when we are growing our dahlias. Not to mention, these dahlia tubers can be pretty pricey, so we don't want to be disappointed. What I like to do early in the season, about a week or two before my last frost date, is I like to pre-sprout my tubers. This isn't required, but it's something I like to do. I just fill a tray up moist potting soil and cover the tubers. Again, we just want it to be moist. We don't want it to be sopping wet because that can lead to rot, especially if the temperatures are still cool. You know, wet soil, cool soil, it is a combination for disaster, especially when it comes to dahlia tubers. Another reason that I like to pre-sprout my tubers rather than just stick them in the ground, we've already mentioned they can be a little bit pricey, but these shoots that will be growing from our tubers are somewhat delicate, and if you're like me and have a lot of trouble with snails and slugs and very heavy soil, then, you know, the tubers could be lost and you might just be left disappointed. Within a few weeks, I like to keep mine in my unheated low tunnel, but of course you can start them indoors. If you want more information about my low tunnel and things, there are tons of videos here on the channel to help you with that. But you can see the growth comes on very, very quick. Usually at this stage, this size of plant, I will be ready to transplant this into the garden, into a well-amended bed that has been worked to just a very nice depth that is nice and rich and fluffy, with a nice finished compost and things like that. But before I do that, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start taking some dahlia cuttings so that I can multiply the number of dahlia plants that I have in my yard. If you're interested in more detailed information about taking dahlia cuttings, I'll put a link in the cards so that you can check out that video here on my channel. But taking dahlia cuttings is such a great way to multiply the number of flowers that you have in your yard at very, very little cost, which is awesome. After I've prepared the cuttings, I don't use a rooting hormone or anything like that. After I have prepared my cuttings, it only takes probably maybe 2 to 3 weeks for them to finally take root, and before we have a new plant that we can kind of nurture along until it is time to transplant them in the garden. My experience with cuttings, I find that they do always bloom the first season, and usually they will produce some pretty nice sized tubers as long as my soil is nice and healthy. It depends again on the variety. Some are more ready to produce tubers in the first season from a cutting than others, so it does take a little bit of trial and error, just like everything here that I talk about on my channel. So don't be discouraged if you fail the first time. Whenever I fail, I just try again, and eventually, usually, I finally figure it out. So after I have taken my cuttings, again, we're going to start thinking about our garden bed. We want it to be weed-free, lots of nice fluffy compost. I don't want my soil to be compacted because Here in my yard, dahlias can struggle because I do have a very compacted, heavy clay soil. So over the years, I've added lots of, compost and even some mulch and leaf clippings and things like that. As for the cuttings, after they have rooted, they're not really ready to go in the garden yet. I like to give them a little bit of time in another potted container or a cup before they've reached just a size that is strong enough that I know nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to damage the plants. Again, it's up to you. That just works the best for me here in my yard. If you have, say, containers or raised beds, it might be a completely different scenario for you. In growing these dahlias and putting them in the ground, you also want to come up with a plan in terms of weed prevention. I am using Weed Barrier landscape fabric. This is just the fabric that I use throughout my entire garden. I've been using the same Weed Barrier here for about 6 growing seasons now. It holds up very, very well. Of course, lots and lots of options in terms of weed control. So that is totally up to you. As you can see, many of these plants are starting to grow very, very tall, kind of like in the shape of a tree, and we don't want that. So we're going to actually need to start thinking about pinching our dahlias. You can see some of these plants have already been pinched and they're branching very nicely with 3 to 5 shoots coming from the plants rather than just the one tall plant. Now, dahlia pitching is important because it allows the plants to become bushier and more strong, robust, just healthier in general. And when it comes time to bloom, they will produce many, many more flowers rather than those that were allowed to just grow straight up, as many of my larger specimens are doing here. So to trim them out or to pinch them, all I'm going to do is take my snips and snip out that little growth point. No need to remove large sections or anything like that. In fact, that can be detrimental because large sections can open up the hollow stem and that can cause rot if water gets in there. Between cuts, anytime you're cutting your dahlias or doing anything with the dahlias, I like to sanitize my tools just because various kind of dahlia viruses can be spread from one plant to another through your tools. So if you're looking to keep your dahlia garden as clean as possible, you definitely want to make sanitizing your tools a priority when you are just going through and doing routine tasks. I know it seems like some people might think it's a lot of work and effort, but it is worth it in order to keep your plants just healthy and thriving. After a few weeks, you'll see that pinch out that we made will have branched into 2 new branches for every pinch that we made. So that's doing exactly what we wanted to do so that we can promote these nice, lush, just full plants as they continue to grow. Now, after the plants have become established a little bit, I do fertilize them. I like to use a low nitrogen fertilizer. I find that here in my yard, if I apply too much nitrogen to my dahlias, they will just make big old dahlia bushes with no flowers whatsoever. And, talk about a disappointment growing these beautiful, huge bushes and then they refuse to make a flower. So I always avoid adding nitrogen to my dahlias in general. And as the season progresses, they might be a little bit slow while the weather is hot. I find that mine don't really start to bloom until the end of August into September and October. Those are the months when the weather is absolutely the nicest here in my zone here in Kentucky, 6B7. The heat of the summer has subsided a little bit, and it allows the dahlias to make the most gorgeous, colorful, vibrant, bright, amazing blooms. And I just love enjoying the show. I love using them for cut flower arrangements. I love giving them away. I just can't believe how quickly dahlias have become one of my absolute favorite flowers. And this year, one of the things that we wanted to do is to save the seeds from the dahlias. So I let several of the dahlia plants be pollinated by the bees this year, and I let those plants produce seeds. The seeds are produced with these kind of like cone-shaped looking pods. They start out very, very kind of pale in color, and as they dry, they turn brown. Some of the seeds are more obvious and you can see that they are maturing, but what I like to do is just give the seed pod a squeeze and I can generally tell if seeds are being produced, if pollination was successful with that variety. But once the seed pods have dried, all I'm going to do is take them off the plant. You, of course, have the option of letting them dry even further if they are not completely dry. If you're perhaps having trouble with rain and worried that they might rot. I know I had to pick some of the seed pods early because I was concerned that rot may be an issue. But generally, once you open the seeds, these big black plump seeds are very, very prominent, and you should have no trouble collecting them, finding them. I think the hardest part of this process is, of course, just blowing away that extra debris that surrounds the seed in order to store them in envelopes. Again, there's another more detailed video about this if you're interested, and I'll put that in the cards. After the first frost has arrived, this means your plants will be done, unfortunately, for the remainder of the season. While a light frost might not kill the plants back all the way, a hard frost or hard freeze will definitely do some major damage and will result in your beautiful dahlias turning completely black and limp and mushy and gross and sad looking. But the good news is that means that we can now go through and dig our dahlias and kind of store them for seasons to come. This is just a very brief overview of the storage process. Again, I have another video for that if you are interested. What I like to do is I like to wait a week after they've died back, and then I will remove all the foliage from the dahlia plants. Then I wait another week, and I will then dig up the tubers in the yard. You got to be extra careful digging up these tubers, of course. I've had plenty of experience in digging these, and let me tell you, one of the most frustrating things about digging dahlia tubers is when you think you think you're far enough away from the root and you still manage to slice one in half with a shovel. I dislike that so much. But after we have dug the tubers, what I like to do is rinse them off and then let them dry another day or so. Give them a second rinse, let them dry again, and then we are able to pack the tubers away in some vermiculite and store them in a cool, dark place for the remainder of the winter. Of course, if you live in a zone where dahlias are hardy, you do not have to do this. I am in zone 6B, as I've already mentioned. I think dahlias are hardy to zone 8. Technically, I probably could overwinter them with some protection here, but I really want to go through and divide these tubers up and just, get ready for the next growing season. So I'm going to store these away for the winter, and we will start the process all over again in late March of the next growing season. That's really about it for this video. I know that it is very much a quick overview. A lot of these different kind of sections of this video have their own dedicated video on my channel already devoted to the topic. So if you're interested in a certain part of growing these dahlias, then you might want to check those videos out. Of course, I am not an expert. Very much like you, I am just, a person with a backyard who loves growing flowers. So I always appreciate any tips or tricks that you might have. Be sure to leave them in the comments below. And of course, leave a comment. It helps with our channel so much when you leave a comment. So I appreciate it very much. Of course, if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I'd absolutely love to have you. We're just trying to grow our little gardening community here on YouTube. We grow a lot of cut flowers and all kinds of stuff, so you really never know what I'm gonna post next. Be sure to share with your friends if you want to, all that good stuff. The links to our Patreon is down in the description below. Our Patreon and our memberships here on the channel now. That's a new feature. Help to support us so that we can keep on making content about flowers and donating our flowers, of course, to anybody who needs a little extra sunshine, I suppose. Hopefully we'll have a really great new year in terms of that. The link to my blog is also down there where you can find more information about the things that I post here on the channel as well as our shop. and Facebook and everything else. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. I'm just rambling on now. I hope that you are having such an incredible day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.